hand over immediately to our first speaker, who is Axel Bierer from DG Energy of the European Commission. And Axel is an economist working within the unit for energy efficiency. Over to you.
Yes. Thanks a lot. I'm about to speak about the smart finance for smart buildings initiative of the Commission, and given that this is rather about the overall frame or policy background, and which has already been covered to a large extent, and we're behind in time, I can be brief, but it might be helpful to put several measures coming from Europe, from a European perspective, a bit in perspective with the underlying ideas and issues which we have identified. Actually, we have already seen. We have already discussed that there are the massive investment need, which is absolutely necessary to reach the ambitious Paris climate goals for 2000 and the climate goals for 2030 and beyond 2050. Huge investment gap or investment necessities has been identified, in particular for the building sector, where the greatest potential is, where we have the inefficient building stock, and the issues which has been identified by it's the green, okay, which has been identified by EEFIG is the bottleneck in financing. How to activate financing, and there are several issues. Obviously, first of all, there is the issue of funding. Funding seems to be available. Often funding is not seen as a problem, but at the same time, access to public funds is a difficulty. And we have already mentioned in the discussion before that certain potential debtors are not seen as more or less risky because they might have lack of cash flow, and there's a huge degree of intransparency, short-sightedness, and market intransparency. How to overcome these issues in the face of the lack of information. So the first pillar is more effective use of public funds. So it's about deploying financial instruments and energy efficiency funds more effectively from the European level to feed it better on the national and regional level. So we have launched the better blending of funds. And the second point, assistance and aggregation, how to increase transparency from the people who want to invest, who need to renovate, how to give them information about the access of funds, and how to aggregate the projects so that there will be funding available. So in that context, we have already talked about the one-stop shops are extremely important to have access at local level, project development assistance facilities. And finally, there's the information gap from the perspective of finances and banks. So it's about de-risking, understanding the risk and benefits for finances and investors. The de-risking energy efficiency platform to demonstrate which proven benefits have been realized, as already indicated by Paul in his presentation, and a commonly accepted underwriting framework. So the point is about making the European funds better, more attractive. We have additionally to the structural funds, we have launched the European Fund for Structural Investments for 5 years. In a 5-year period, the 500 billion euros, roughly 20% are available for energy. So it could, according to the current uptake, it's 20% who goes into energy. So it's 100 billion euros about the 5-year period, which is ready to be used due to this new finance instruments, and it's almost exclusively used for energy efficiency and renewables. So there's a huge potential there. this can be combined with the cohesion funds. The point is that the initiative uses the funds in a way that make them easily combinable with private funds. So in different risk tranches, we can do it. Banks can therefore have a strong incentive to combine these public funds to make it more attractive, being more attractive for them. So they combine it with their commercial loans, and we have achieve a high leverage level for public financing triggering private financing. So it's estimated to be a leverage level of 4 and higher. It is structured in a way that it should support structures that already exist, so it's not necessarily begin from new. The Commission is currently working also on a comprehensive package to facilitate the deployment of these platforms. So this will be accompanied by the technical assistance at local level, like ELENA and other issues. So it's relatively easy implementation. So here again, banks can benefit from the great rating of the European Investment Bank. It is also relevant to have to build as much on existing structures as possible. No need to select new fund managers, and to go through it, we provide additional information about funding that is already in place or can be provided at national and regional level. So we are going to publish a database which shows how existing public funds in member states can be used to support also these measures. There's then another measure which has already been discussed, also in order to make public funds easily available, not counting energy contracting and public investments in energy efficiency as consumption, but as a really long-term investment, so it does not go into the debt balance of the national governments according to Eurostat. And of course, our project, what we are just doing right now here, is the regional events and several other events at European level that are supporting this drive for finance. Within the energy efficiency platform, which the Commission supports and where the Commission offers support to member states which wish this to build it up, it's also possible to combine grants and loans, both grants and public loans with loans of the private sector, so that the first hit of risk in terms of non-servicing of default is borne by public funds, so that the risk appetite or that the risk aversion of the private lender, due to the fact that there might not be completely transparent energy efficiency risk, is be lowered, and the private banks have a stronger incentive to combine it with the public funds. ELENA has already been presented by Paul, so it's a real project development assistance program, and I think also PDA is extremely important, which is done by EASME. The Octave program in Alsace, I think, fits into that issue, that there are at local level, there's really the one-stop shops, or that lenders are really possible investors and small-scale investors or private households are really hold by the hand. They are really informed. They're told, okay, here these are the means which are at your disposal. These are the financing solutions which you can do, and this is the energy performance tracking which is going on. The de-risking energy efficiency platform. This is the third pillar, which strives at making at addressing the market failure of the lack of information of investors about the efficiency of the benefits of energy efficiency, which are not immediately apparent. the de-risking energy efficiency platform has been launched with proven return on investments on projects which have been conducted, so they can serve as a benchmark and as a guidance for future projects and a realistic return on investment. Additionally, there's the underwriting toolkit which has been presented put in place, which gives additional information about energy efficiency related risk, of course, like maintenance risk or regulatory risk, weather risk, the risk of non-foreseeable performance, but which gives also an indication of benefits for investors, which include obviously the less spending on energy, but also additional benefits relating to health and safety, to a nicer, better work environment, but also on branding and marketing value, for example. So if there's a specific investment, you can really incredibly sell that your company is much more carbon friendly. It can also be taken into account. It might boost your revenue and what you can expect to sell. And it is therefore also something which should be taken into account in terms of additional revenue in the future. So this is a relevant part of the relevant part of the third pillar. We have the wider policy context. Most of you will probably know that this is the financing of a sustainable energy and finance, and I think it's relevant to say that it's currently the Commission has put forward a proposal on taxonomies to say, okay, to define really which are the technical screening criteria for environmentally sustainable activities, and the public consultation is beginning to start soon, and I think the work of the EEFIG group has fed into that, and finally the high-level group will for finance, the technical expert group for sustainable finance, will suggest its input for the final regulation, which the Commission expects to adopt in the second half of 2019. And I should also mention that the technical expert group works also on other issues, like an EU green bond standard, which makes it easier to classify bonds by both from the private and for the public sector, according to its contribution to our environmental and carbon goals, and other issues like metrics, improving disclosure and climate-related information in annual reports for companies. Again, an additional incentive to engage in these issues. Again, it's mostly built as much as possible on existing initiatives. So I think this is relevant because we know already there have been very, very great work done, like, for example, in Austria on green bonds, which has already been conducted. That's it so far.
Thank you very much, Axel. And as somebody working to support cities and municipalities, it's been very interesting to see the way in which the support under those three pillars of smart finance for smart buildings has evolved, and that new instruments are coming on stream very rapidly to support that local activity. So very quickly on to our next speaker, who is Peter Sweatman, who is Chief Executive of Climate Strategy and Partners, and Chairman of Energy Efficiency Capital Advisors, but is here today in his capacity as the Rapporteur for the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group, EEFIG. Hit the green button.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy, and thanks again to allow me this opportunity to describe the de-risking energy efficiency platform to you. You've heard it mentioned now, I think, in 3 speeches so far. So I think what I'll do, given the limited time, is just very quickly run through these slides, but before I do, can anybody raise their hand who has used the Deep platform? Okay, so I'd say, well, so it's probably 20% of the audience, I would say. Can you raise your hand if you have any aspiration at all of using a database which provides information on energy efficiency investments? Okay, well, at least we have a high proportion of those people for whom it would be interesting. This slide I've presented many times. What it essentially illustrates is that a lot has been done. So all of these icons and all of these initiatives are initiatives which, before 2015, I don't think would have taken place. I think the EEFIG and its cousin in the G20 has done an enormous amount to uncover and unwrap all of the issues that previously we referred to as the barriers to energy efficiency investment. A number of them, like accounting, which was mentioned before, have been resolved thanks to our work. And I think that providing greater visibility and transparency to data sits at the core of many things, but mostly of the business model that is required to match the available finance. And I notice many times this morning, and correctly, speakers from Germany, Austria, and France that we're focusing on here have said that the supply of money is really not a problem. I think that's definitely true in those countries. I think it's pretty much true in most countries at this point in time with respect to investable projects. So, where do we find investable projects? I have to give credit to the European Commission for bravely delivering a database, because delivering databases is something that I think often public monies enjoy doing, but infrequently are those databases sort of kept up and embraced by the sectors they are intended to be embraced by, or indeed survive longer or long enough to be a continued pillar for that sector. The Deep database, since launch, has attracted 10,000 projects. That makes it Europe's largest database of this type. So first of all, I think that it's important. So I think you actually need to understand the fact that to build the database, our team, first of all, went and did an assessment of other databases around the world, and we utilized the inputs from the United States, where we found the biggest database of its kind. And we used the same language. So it's perhaps not even evident to you, but this language that we use to describe the projects inside Deep is the same language that they use in the United States. And if there had been an equivalent in Asia, we would have found it and we would have used their language. And I think that it's important to know that, because when you're dealing with 28 member states and all of them have different ways of describing projects, the first challenge in a database is to make those projects comparable. So the benchmarking feature of this database is really important. The other thing I think the database does demonstrate, which Paul alluded to in his opening remarks, is given it's the biggest database of its kind, and given that it's got 10,000 projects, roughly half buildings and half industry, it demonstrates the underlying pillar of why we talk about energy efficiency first. And that's because it's still cheaper to save energy than it is to produce it. And that simple fact is evidenced by this large database. So the total cost of saving energy in industry is 1.2 euro cents per kilowatt hour, and in buildings it's 2.5. Now, of course, buildings is a mix, as you will see if you go into the database, between deep renovations and shallow renovations, and industry is a mix of multiple measures. But having said that, it's clear that what has been done has performed against the expectations we have, and in fact, there's plenty more opportunity to enter projects and to have projects with longer horizon periods and still be profitable. So Deep is translated into multiple languages and available through multiple formats. It's got 200 fields of data, to my point earlier, which is it gathers the data that people want. And it has a format which enables you to compare projects that you're working on to try and see whether those projects are similar to the types of projects in the geographical zone or of the type which you expect. And it's not. So in my introduction, someone said to me, about 3 years ago, actually, I was challenged. He said, the speaker, whose also name was Peter, said to me, "We've heard you talk a lot about energy efficiency finance. You know, you got a lot of talent. Why don't you go out and then do it?" So 3 years ago, I did go and set up a company, and that company is called Energy Efficiency Capital Advisors. And Energy Efficiency Capital Advisors since then has advised on 30 million euros worth of projects of real finance that has gone from cities in Spain to pension funds. So what did I discover having done that over the last 3 years? I discovered that no database is ever going to generate a spreadsheet that a pension fund is going to use. The spreadsheets that pension funds use to make their assessments are developed by expert teams over months and months and months. In one particular example, at the current time, we're modeling 17 individual local authority contracts with 15 years worth of cash flow payments and different ESCOs and different configurations across all of them. No database, no matter how good it is going to replace the need for analysts in financial institutions to model transactions. So one of the things that people say of Deep is they say, well, it's all very well, but it doesn't tell me the returns of projects. Haha, the returns of projects. What does tell you the returns of projects? Even after 6 months of modeling on spreadsheets, the returns of projects are still uncertain. There is no certainty around them, and they depend upon multiple detailed levels of cash flow analysis. So Deep doesn't do that, nor should it. But it does give us the results of all of the work of probably decades of these institutions and what they've been able to achieve. I'm happy to see EIB both present physically here and giving us data. They're an enormous investor, probably one of the world's largest and most experienced in energy efficiency. We have a number of others, as you can see. We have industrial players who are providing us data. We have research laboratories, and there's space for more. So any of you who wish to have the visibility of your logo into these presentations and using this going forward, please do contribute more data. This is the way the data breaks down. Normally, in these presentations, I'm in countries where I appeal to them and say, look how awfully you're performing, please give us data. I can't do that in the case of being in Frankfurt, Germany, because you are on the top of that list. And Austria, you are in the top 5, as we heard earlier, and France, you are also, except with the case of industry, doing pretty well. So we can always do with more. I look forward to hopefully having the resources to be able to improve this database going forwards. Something I hope that the third phase of EEFIG will be able to deliver. And to the extent that we do, we will be coming back to you for not just your data, but also how you're using the database and how we can improve it. There are quite a lot of instruction manuals and booklets translated into those 5 languages that help you use the Deep database. One of the things that you should not be afraid of is going on there and just trying it. We have attempted to make it user-friendly, and if you have trouble trying it for some reason, then you can write an email to any one of us and we will respond quickly. We haven't had an enormous amount of sort of help desk type inquiries, but we will be very happy as a consortium to respond to them. In the case of buildings, you can see from this chart, essentially these charts are designed so that you can see on the y-axis payback time. The red bar essentially tells you where the median payback time of the individual measures that you can hardly read. It's air conditioning, lighting, building fabric, and then integrated renovation on the far side. Integrated renovation's red line is at about 15 years. Building fabric measures is just above 10. Lighting and air conditioning is around 3 years of paybacks. The kind of thin sticks is 90% distribution, and the big chunks are 75% distribution. All that means is within the database, we've got projects that can support a 35-year payback and a 5-year payback in integrated renovation. The point of showing you like this is to say there is a huge degree of variability even within the different the different categories. Having said that, however, the medians are quite representative now that we have so many projects. This is how the same data looks when you break down by buildings type, and the one that's highlighted is healthcare buildings. You have offices, industrial buildings, multifamily is the blue one on the far right, single-family homes, and so on. So there's a buildings type analysis which you can look at. For industry, we look at the individual measures. I'm not going to read them all, but essentially from the far left, you have the heating measures, you have waste-related measures, you have motors, and so on and so forth, compressed air, all the way to street lighting on the far right, cooling and pumps on the far, sort of next to that. Again, you can see for industry, one of the things that I'm always surprised by is, and Stefan Besser mentioned it in his remarks, industrial firms on the whole perhaps don't need external financing to do this, but what is surprising every time I've moderated discussions within industry is that they all still only consider measures with a 3-year payback. Which again, it's, and that's the same Germany, Austria, France, Spain, you name it. And the thing that surprises me the most is if anyone were to stand up at the annual general meeting of one of those industries and say, we're just leaving behind 12, 13% IRR investments every single day of the week by not saving energy, I don't know how well that stakeholder audience would react to those remarks. Of course, they don't say that. What they do say is, we invested, our turnover is 2 billion, we invested 1 million in energy efficiency, and we're going to have that pay back quickly. I don't know how impressive that is, but it tends to be rather anecdotal, the way we hear from industry about these investments. And what we don't hear is the story that in order to be competitive in the long term in Europe, we need to be doing much, much more with much less energy. So finally, and to end, I'm going to talk a bit about multiple benefits. I think a lot of people who've been in energy efficiency for a long time realize that energy savings alone and paybacks alone don't deliver energy efficiency investments. So again, I'll just repeat that in case you missed it. Energy savings alone don't deliver energy efficiency investments. Energy efficiency investments are delivered by a host of benefits, some of which, for some projects, will be the motivators, other of which with other projects will be motivators. What the deep database is only able to capture in 10% of its projects are these benefits. So the multiple benefits might include carbon emissions reductions, they might include increased productivity, comfort measures, lower additional pollution emissions, health of the buildings, increased value, and other components. The IEA lists, I think, up to 15 components, and one of the things I hope that EEFIG will do going forwards is spend more time trying to assess why is it that projects aren't taking an accurate measure of these things, given how important they are in driving those investment decisions in the first place. So 10% of the projects have them. That block on the far left-hand side is carbon emissions reductions. So even of the data we have just over 600 of the 10,000 projects providing us carbon emissions reductions. But we really don't have any visibility on some of those, I think, more likely and stronger motivators for projects. And that would be an area, that is a gap that I think we should be looking to fill going forwards. As I said, these are some examples of projects, some of the real projects that we've been doing. I'm happy to answer questions. I included this slide, which was shown in Paris by a colleague of Paul's, last week, to really sort of state that with respect to the third phase of EEFIG, I'm particularly excited by 2 areas of work. Support that we can provide on energy efficiency into the TEG, the expert group looking at the taxonomy for green finance and sustainable finance, and also looking specifically at the correlations that exist in existing bank databases between energy performance and default and arrears of clients. In other words, my personal view, and that's why I raised it on the prior panel, is that if banks took a detailed look at the existing correlation and evidence in their existing loan portfolios, where they looked at the underlying energy performance of the buildings that they had lent against, and they correlated that with the default and arrears rates on their loans, like the Bank of England has published, they would probably find that there is a direct correlation between energy performance and lower default rates. And were we to find that out across Europe in multiple member states, I personally believe there would be a very strong flow of banks following those 4 that have already committed to make available to their customers new energy efficiency finance projects and finance. So my time has run out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. And yes, if you've not registered for Deep, to emphasize, it's free. It's very easy to go and register, and there is an absolute wealth of data there, although it is hoped to get very much more into the database. So our next speaker will talk about the potential benefits of digitization for energy efficiency finance with some example projects, and it's Benedetta Friso Bellemo, Director of Sales for Joule Assets. Benedetta is leading sales strategy and other activities at Joule Assets Europe, is conducting policy and market research, and is leading business development for them in the Italian market. So over to you.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for having us here again for this forum. We are always happy to be here, and we're really grateful for your support on our daily fight to support the energy efficiency project market, in particular small and medium energy service companies, which are our target. I'm here today to present EEFIG, our IT platform, which is indeed a way to boost energy efficiency investments, but it's really, as we work through it, we realize that it's really a way to boost, more in general, the energy in transition from the bottom and to the bottom as well, because by supporting small and medium energy service companies, we allow them to implement their projects to other SMEs, to small town, to low-income households. So it's really practical way to enjoy the benefits, economic and social benefits of energy efficiency. So I knew it. Just to start, who are we? Joule Assets was born in the US, where we're still active. We were, at the beginning, we were an investment fund for small energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. When our US team started looking at Europe to find ways to enter the market and to start investing here, what they realized is that there was really no need for another investment fund because the money was there and projects were there. The main issue, as we all know, was that the two finance and contractors could not communicate because we had investment funds that were not able to understand performance-based energy projects, and on the other hand, contractors who had no idea on what type of investments were available and how to structure financially their projects. So we started in Europe, our activities 3 years ago. And here in Europe, our goal is to bridge the gap between finance and sustainable energy projects. How we do it is on one side by creating the market, so through the EEFIG platform that I'm going to present in the next slides. So practically supporting projects to access finance, and on the other hand as well, which is the 50% of our activity basically, is by shaping the market itself, because we are really active with associations. We're chairing the Home and Building Committee in Brussels for Smarten. We are really active. We're collaborating also with the International Energy Agency. They've just mentioned us in their last energy efficiency report in October, so we're really happy for that, and it's a big accomplishment for the EEFIG platform. And we do a lot of research as well. We have just published, if you want to have a look at our website, our white paper on the Sustainable Energy Assets Framework, where it's a very useful tool for contractors, as in particular, but in general, to understand the various type of finance available for energy efficiency projects. So yeah, we work a lot in general with stakeholder engagements for various in collaboration with various associations across member states. But yeah, today I'm going to be more specific because I'm presenting EQUAD and CIF. So how do we create the market? So we started this Horizon 2020 project CIF 2 years ago. The project is over and it's now turned into EQUAD, the platform. Here you can see our project partners. We had Verco, SEA, contractor in Italy, HSB, performance insurance, and our IT partners in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. And when we started with this, we wanted to, the situation that we found was this, where we had fund managers on one side who were failing to access projects, and on the other side we had contractors with projects that were not standardized and were not ready to be financed. So I'm just running a bit because I realize that time is not enough. So I'll just go more in depth with the platform. How did we solve this project, this finance gap, was by creating this tool, this IT tool that would standardize projects. So we have projects developers inserting all their pipelines, and we provide with third-party valuation, with performance insurance with our partner HSB, technical certification provided by ICP, and we do a preliminary financial due diligence on all the projects, support with contractual development. So we, as we build the platform to get in collaboration with the investors in our network, we try to insert every possible criteria that is useful for investors to cut down their due diligence costs and access a pool of projects that is ready, verified, and start negotiations with these contractors without losing too much time and money in long due diligence processes. So this is the practical process. So how does that work? The contractor, so the ESCO, would insert the projects into the platform. The platform provides a first analysis and a first calculation on the technical and financial information, and creates a pro forma, which is understandable and readable for investors. We, as Joule Assets, provide a preliminary due diligence and an analysis of the documents through our document management system. And when we assess that the project is valid and ready, we send it to the investors in our network, but only to the investors that fit those specific criteria. So after that, we have in about a week, the investors state their interest in the projects or not. And we, even if it was not our intention at the beginning of the project, we realized that it was really important to support in this second phase as well, because contractors struggle often to go through the negotiation phase. So we support with contractual development, and we help them through the negotiation with investors up until the end. This is an overview of the investors in our network. It's a quite limited list, but as you can see, there are very different realities. There are large banks, small investment funds, local investment funds. So we're really able to access different type of projects as well. So the platform makes it really easier for investors to access these small and medium projects. The projects cover different type of technologies from in very, very different sectors, public, private, residential, and they are standardized. There's also, as I mentioned, the option of accessing insurance and technical due diligence. So what we realized at the end, so that the real, together with this due diligence process, the preliminary due diligence process that we have through the Equal platform, which makes it easier, we are also able to just put some barriers on the criteria of projects that enter the platform. So we are able to solve to access the technical validity of the projects. We are able to train contractors on the fact that they have to choose financially healthy and clients. We check their contracts and we make sure that they're standardized, that IRRs are attractive for investors, that payback times are interesting. So barriers definitely remain. There was a case study, but I don't have much time. Yeah. So the case study, I won't have time to go through it, but it's just you can find all about it in our website. It's a very interesting case study on an ESCO that we supported Fine Finance for a £5 million pipeline, and it's an ESCO that finished. Its transition from a classic installer to a full ESCO with a lighting as a service model. So that was really interesting, and they're doing great. I won't have time. So the conclusions on our side is that the platform really helps investors. There are still barriers that are really important to address now. For us, it's our new mission. In contract standardization, risk assessment, and to support in the lack of access from the ESCO perspective on growth capital. So we're going to try to adapt the platform to these new challenges, try to push for new innovative financing structures, and make it just perfect for every type of projects and every size and every technology. So thank you, and apologies for my delay.
Thank you very much, and very good to hear from Horizon 2020 supported project that's working to reduce those transaction costs. So our next speaker is Claudia Bärdges-Koch, who's head of debt, investor relations, and client acquisition at Munich Hype. I won't try and pronounce it in German. And she's been there since 2008 and is going to talk to us about a perspective from the banking side and what banks need. So over to you.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, good morning to all of you. So I've been just approached with the question, making energy efficiency investable, and what do banks need? So I will just simply show it by my employer, Münchener, how we've just more or less done or gone our way. So it's easy. Münchener is a specialized mortgage lender. So we are the partner of the cooperative Volks- and Raiffeisen banks in Germany with their mortgage lending business. Ours is a business model as a cooperative bank is already sustainable, but we had to show investors and our stakeholders as well that we have sustainability really integrated into our business model. So we've done part of our homework, and in 2014 we've already started as a pioneer, that we just were a pioneer in the sustainable market segment of fund brief here, and we issued a first ESG fund brief, but this fund brief had more or less a social focus. And with all the problems, we realized what happened in 2014. We started, okay, we should use a different approach. And that was the point when Munich Hypo decided, okay, we want to start with our own sustainable loan products. And in November 2015, we have introduced the Munich Hypo Green Loan, which is concentrating on energy efficiency. And by the beginning of this year, we implemented as well a social loan, which is called Family Loan, because we always mention sustainability is not only green or energy efficiency, but social as well. But I will concentrate with my going on presentation on the energy efficient part of it. Coming to that, we as well, it has been mentioned here before, we are partner of, or just like member bank and pilot bank in the EMAG, the Energy Efficient Mortgage Action Plan. So just with the experience we had already with issuing and using the product, we contribute to this initiative. And what we've done, just like when the first question is how to invest in energy efficiency, it's we ourselves as a bank, we invest in our own product because we incentivize our customers while reducing the interest rate for the green loan we're using, just to make it more, let's say, affordable, but also more interesting that our customer thinks, okay, these are the details I have to fulfill, so I'm going green with my loan, which is quite helpful. So what we more or less organized, we have a complete sustainability circle. We have a sustainability management in our company. We propose as well new product ideas, which are then just like used with our sustainability mortgage lending. And as an issue of German fund brief, we do have as well the possibility to refund or refinance ourselves via a sustainable fund brief. So when everyone said the money is there, we do need the money, but we know where and how to get it via fund brief, which is our most important funding tool. So talking about the instrument or the loan product we introduced in November 2015, it has clear energy standards, what we're using. You can use it as a customer for purchasing a new construction, modernization, or renovation. And this loan has already been certified by ISS Öncom, which is a sustainability rating agency, because we wanted to have the proof that we don't think, oh, great idea from Munich Hypo, but not accepted by the market or not accepted by the rating agency. Though that even in 2015, we worked together to make sure our loan will be eligible for a future green covered bond. So representing with this loan makes sure it's more or less the best 10% of the German housing market we're refinancing with this project. We didn't have any standards and we didn't know how to approach the market. So the idea was the DINA, the German housing report, said the normal energy consumption is using coal was at 180 kilowatt hours per square meter. We said no, but Germany always said we're not going to use coal any longer. So we just already choose something which is only using gas. And then we had a consumption of 140 kilowatt hours. And then we said, yeah, but to be very efficient, we take, just like we say, half of it, 50%. That was the reason or the way why we started with 70 kilowatt hours with our loan. And this will make sure we will contribute to the savings of CO2 emission. It's quite a success because already now, every 9th loan we are granting is a green loan. This is for the retail business, what we're doing. And coming to our commercial business, which is only a tiny part of 15% of our overall business, we're using, or just we finance commercial real estate with sustainability certificates. There are just like already certification systems in place, and we're using DGNB, BREEAM, LEED, and HQE. And we know already, because there have been other issues in the market as well, that the rating agency said, okay, but we don't like you to use just like only good, but they were going for excellent and not silver and gold. So we adopted already with our approach the upgrade, which was requested already. And these are more or less about the tools we are using for our bond. And then next thing is, when it said, what do a bank need? The first thing is you do definitely need a sustainability rating, because a lot of investors, they look at the issuer first. So if you, as in our case, as a banker, you're not acceptable for whatever reason, your complete business model is not sustainable, they wouldn't invest in you. Even if the bond might be deep green, but if you as an issuer, you might not have success to this market. So that was the first thing. To issue the bond, we needed a green bond framework, which clearly based on the green bond principles. That was the next step. For the marketing process and to convince investors, it's always good to have an external proof, which is provided by a second-party opinion, what we have just as well from Ökom research. And they really go into details with your bond. So, yeah, interesting work. And I can tell you, just like as a usual banker, when you start in the expertise of energy efficiency, is enormous what you really learn while being in this business. Next thing is you have to contribute to the SDGs. In our case here, it's energy efficiency, no question. We have already just like granted assets up to more than 1.1 billion. And it's a permanent process because it's a business cycle we have. So this cover pool part, which is green, will grow more and more. Then we had been on a roadshow because you have to explain your concept and the bond to your investors. And in October this year, we were happy. We were just like issuing our first green covered bond. It was quite a success, more or less 2% two times oversubscribed. And the biggest success for our company was we had 80 investors for this bond, which was very, very granular. And we had new investors, and even 40% of this bond were really dedicated green investors. So definitely a great pro for us was we broadened our investor base. We sharpened the profile of the bank regarding sustainability. And we really implemented a complete sustainability process or cycle within our bank. Or just like, negative parts of it, it's an enormous, intensive external work you have to do. You have to convince even people within your organization. But it can be done. You have additional costs, no question, and you still have no benefit while issuing green. And you always have a potential reputational risk if your assets are really deep green or if something might come up and what you haven't realized or checked before. And you still have some uncertainties left because we were a first mover, let's say in 2015 already with the first bond and with our with a new product. It's what comes up with the HLEC taxonomy. Will our assets still fit into this taxonomy? Will they still be green? It's one question which concerns us. Next thing is we are a member of the AMAP, the Energy Efficient Mortgage Action Plan. And here we even realize they have very, very ambitious targets coming from the EU Commission. What a surprise. But then will it still fit? Will it still move? Will we see some kind of transition period? So there are some questions for us. And I can promise you, if you work together with a rating agency for sustainability, they ask you to improve as well. So we will go from 70, I guess, to 55 kilowatt hours in the future. So there's always something up and you always have to improve. And and grandfathering is a question because we've been told to go long-term and we provide loans normally up to 30 years. So the one important question for us, because we give the discount rate up to 30 years. So when we grant a loan with a state-of-the-art green nowadays, will there become some kind of grandfathering? Will it be still eligible for an upcoming bond? These are questions we really just like concentrate on, where we are just curious what comes up with EMAP, with HLEX, and whatever is coming up in our market. Thank you. I think I just like made 10 seconds too long, so I'm lucky. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for setting out the perspective from one example of a bank working here in Germany. So our final presenter, and then please have a few questions ready after his presentation, is Ruediger Lohse. The asset class energy efficiency project has been well hyped already by speakers in the plenary sessions this morning. So he has a job to do now to deliver on that. Ruediger is head of energy service development at KEA, who are working in Baden-Württemberg, and I'll let him introduce the agency and the project a little more. Over to you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you also for organizing this. This was great effort, and feel very comfortable to prepare this with you together. So I'm speaking today, unfortunately, not on Eleanor experiences, which I would also like to do. I can really recommend strongly to do this also in Germany. Today, I talk on behalf of our consortium, which is, as you can see here, consisting of 3 parties. First party is DENEF, which is the German Initiative on Energy Efficiency. Susanne Bollmann is here with us, and she will have a presentation in the industry sector later on. And also University of Stuttgart, which is the Energy Efficiency Production Institute. Also Diana Wang is here with us. So in case you have any further questions, you can also approach her. And our small agency, we are just a local energy, a regional energy agency of state of Baden-Württemberg that's south of Frankfurt, a couple of miles, 80 miles south of Frankfurt. It's in our own area. It's between France and Bavaria, and that tells the story. We are working in the field of energy efficiency since 25 years. We are 25 years on the market already now. And usually we are on the focus, have a focus on energy performance contracting and other business schemes. But here in this case, I think we are able, with great support from the German DOE and Stefan Besser, to tackle a very interesting performance gap in the sector of energy efficiency, not automatically being dealt in ESCO business. So if you are in a certain age, you try to comfort yourself sometimes with sweet memories, and sweet memories are when we started 15 years away, or 20 years away with the windmill parks. I remember quite well then talking to regional banks and inviting them to provide finance for this stuff. And if you compare this to what we hear now in the energy efficiency sector in the last 5 years, that's quite similar. Now, and if you look at it on the success story, you can easily identify those key factors which already have been mentioned by EEFIG and others here, which means standardization of process, lean conduction of the process, risks widely known. 0 risks is not available, of course, but risk should be known and maybe defined, and of course performance data is available. Based on these 3 issues, we went back to the energy efficiency sector and looked at it, and I need not repeat this again and again, but from the specific perspective of investors here, we have 3 maybe major issues. We have high overhead costs, which are coming or resulting from lack of information, lack of due diligence processes, lean due diligence processes especially, and energy efficiency is not haptic. If you have a windmill, you can see that, but what is in this marvelous box which carries out energy efficiency in an air conditioning system? Secondly, you have small and medium-sized investments in average. If we look on the BAFA program, which is a regional, national funding for and a subsidy program for energy efficiency in industries especially, you can see that the average size of that is 150k euro. That means there's not much space to have due diligence on that, and you have some kind of thoughts how to increase the size of that. And then, of course, lack of data, which is already has been mentioned and already is tackled by DEEP. And that's the way where we started and where we wanted to get better and want to provide and work on structures which improve this situation in this project. And you see the name, Asset Class Energy Efficiency, says it all. We just want to move forward. We want to create these structures which allows us to think about energy efficiency as an asset here in Germany. So basically we are a national program. Basically, we are, of course, linked to European other programs and taking avoiding to reinvent wheels from time to time. So when we talk about preparing due diligence and other processes, I want to mention and really thank for the support of more than 50 active stakeholders from the finance industry, from stakeholders from project facilitators, and of course from the German BMWI, so the German DOE, which helps us really along and also buffer to make this a market effort. So we work for the market to create a productive which is in use for the market. To tackle these three issues I mentioned before, we have designed 3 products which are now in the, in the final phase of the structuring process. So the first product is a standardized due diligence, and the second product is a best practice database, which could be used in documenting best practice, especially with regard to performance data. And of course, a pooling platform to tackle the issue of these small-sized projects, which we have mentioned before. So let me go through that very, very quickly. I have 9 minutes now to go. Let me talk about a few sentences about the standard due diligence. I'm also only showing here the peak of the iceberg. So I would be happy to get in discussion with you, especially if you are from the financing sector or if you are a project facilitator. So the basic idea behind that is it should go quick. If you compare this to a kind of mortgage with 150K, average duration of the due diligence process in the bank is maybe not much more than 1.5 at 2 hours. And then the decision should be ready to be made. And so that's the same way we want to approach this and catch up with 70-80% of all these energy efficiency projects in this routine. So standardization, of course, very important is what you hear from time to time from financiers is there's such a lot of data which we need to collect and from here and audit there and such and such. Let's try to standardize that by creating kind of key performance indicators on the economic side, on the business side, and also on the technical side, which allows us to standardize the input data, which is, from my side, or from my perspective, a real step forward. Dynamic business KPIs, that means not just static payback periods and stuff like that, but based on cash flows, we discussed with our stakeholders and financiers what would be illegal business KPIs for them to prepare a decision on financing or not financing. Really important is, as we have heard before, in Germany, money is available. Okay, but it does not go into energy efficiency. So those factors, those KPIs should be also usable for equity. That's very important. If a CFO in a company stands before a decision-making process and say, okay, I want to decide where to set priorities, energy efficiency measure, or my production improvement here and there, where to go, this should fit also here. The KPIs should also serve this question here. So the technical KPIs is an interesting point. If you look at technical KPIs, you learn very quickly from project facilitator that each of the energy efficiency project is totally different from the next one. You may have heard that. Yes, definitely. But let's try to standardize that and try only look at those figures and those contexts who have an impact on the cash flow. That's the first simplification we can have. So we're looking on the plausibility of the baseline, of the savings, of investment costs, and availability over time. That means which kind of products we have here, and also which kind of product quality and planning quality is inserted here. So here we have the strong relationship in this kind of methodology approach to ICP, which has pre-designed this kind of structure already, but we try to improve this based on or with the focus of 6 cross-cutting technologies here. So keep it simple. It's quite clear that if you have such kind of due diligence, you will never catch up with all these detailed information. And maybe there are some informations which are, show some divergences to KPIs existing. And those are consequently pulled out of this quick assessment process. They will be handled in a separate process just to keep the process very short and effective. And of course, it's a self-learning system, so we learn over time from that what's coming back from the projects which have been carried out and where performance data is already available. So a quick glance on this. How is this due diligence working? We have a two-step quick analysis. We have the project framework data. That means who is creditor, who is debitor, what kind of business model is in use, and what kind of contracts are used, hopefully standards. If not, there's a quick way out, as you see here on the right side. And if it goes quite well, we go into the second phase, which is the analysis with KPIs, technical KPIs and business KPIs. And if this KPIs analysis is going well and positive, we go directly into the product 3, which is the bundling platform. So our approach is that we have this kind as a pre-qualification to enter the bundling platform to make sure that we have kind of pre-qualified projects in here. So a very short glance on this. This is optional. Most of the financiers told us, do not get as deep, but my intention is to still do that. But it's here optional. It's a kind of de-risking clinic. So if we have something where the KPIs is obviously a bit aside of the target, we will offer kind of free additional steps which help to manage these risks appropriately. So end of this will be a qualitative and a quantitative fact sheet, which we will present with a kind of points and a rating and a ranking. But you can see here kind of indication how this will look like. We're still working on that, and we still receive massive feedback from our market partners. So project database, have a glance on that. Peter was already mentioning this here. We want to just show, like we would like to introduce and catch up with the performance data, which is obviously an issue in all these databases. A database which only provides, the perspective or the projective data is interesting, very interesting. But the key issue is how to get the performance data back. And you see here 3 parties involved, so the end users, ESCOs or whatever it be, could put in the project data, technical data, and also the business data, cost, investment cost, and savings, and likewise. And the financiers, of course, will put in the credit costs and contract conditions. And we have the insurers, which contribute here the insurance costs and certain conditions available for this specific project. Then the database has a functionality or foresees a functionality calculating, recalculating, and coming back with specific technical KPIs, improving them as a kind of self-learning system. A pooling platform, last but not least, is the way where the market is going on and is where the project and finance are matched together. So we have, on the one hand, project facilitators. What could it be? It could be SMEs, could be industry, could be project facilitators, professionals, but could also be ESCOs, could be also energy efficiency manufacturers. We have a large bunch of energy efficiency manufacturers with us in the stakeholder group, which are looking into the 4.0 perspective, are also active in the energy efficiency networks in Germany, and want to go the next step, predictive maintenance and such kind of stuff, which opens the door for them here to be active also in these kind of after sales and performance phase of energy efficiency. And then, of course, we have finance, and that these 2 parts will be matched together here. The approach is quite simple. After running through the pre-qualification of the due diligence, we will have kind of project facilitation, and we will have the projects with an indicator anonymously put on this platform, and then we get the feedback from financiers. This could be limited from the size of the project, so financiers could be pre-selected. No, I don't want this financier to be to give an offer on that. And secondly, we have the limitations from the financiers. looking for certain types of technologies, looking for certain types of risks, or even looking for certain types of size of projects. So that's something we're working on here, and we're on a good way. I think the project will end by the end of February. We will have a final session. I will mention this again, have 33 seconds now, try to stay in time. Now, how do these three products interact? So the due diligence and the project database will interact over the self-learning mechanism. So project coming in, performance data coming in, will improve the KPIs, will also improve the different cases. Now we're talking about six cross-cutting technologies. Of course, the target is not to stay with that, but increase that. And looking into the bundling platform, the interaction here is, of course, that the project database can give a first indication. Other projects like yours, comparable to yours, have received an interest rate of this and that. That could be one indication, but also the project bundling, of course, gives a feedback on financing condition, on contract periods and others into the project database just to keep the system going. So, last words. We have a final workshop on the 12th of February in Berlin. Will be organized by our colleagues from DENIF. Deliverables will be a toolbox. It will be very straight hand-on, and if we match it to have further funding available, we will try to start a second phase, which means creating a full functional beta version and the rollout in 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now you've heard from a range of panelists addressing issues around improving the investability of energy efficiency, but we'll throw the floor open to questions. If you could just say who you are and which institution you're representing and keep your question fairly brief, that would be very much appreciated. So a show of hands for any questions. Let's go down there first.
Hello, my name is Frederick Brodak. I represent the mentioned Investor Confidence Project here. One question to Mrs. Bärdges-Koch, unless I've misunderstood it. How do you measure the sustainability after having funded the acquisition? So, I mean, if I get it, you measure the sustainability of the property at the moment where you hand out the credit. How do you do that over the lifetime? How do you ensure that the sustainability of that building is kept at a certain level over time? I assume that would be interesting information for people subscribing to your green bond.
Yeah, not surprised. So first thing is the proof while granting can be the EPC, or as well just like a loan as well from KfW. And after that, I think this is the biggest problem, just to have the proof, and that's the reason why we're just a member of the EMAP as well, just to prove the energy performance during lifetime. And there it's just like that we think of just like the getting support from energy providers as well. And the idea was as well within the EMAP to have more or less a key unique identifier for every building, so that the energy provider can just like add the yearly energy performance to this unique key identifier, just like to add this data. And I think Peter mentioned it, to make it available to just like banking, because I think data availability is the biggest one, because normally if your loan is just like the interest is paid and the amortization is paid, normally you don't have a bigger contract, and in none of our contracts is just like included that you just like get the yearly energy consumption from your borrower, and that was something we just like support as well during the via the energy efficient mortgage action plan, just like to find solutions for this as well. Yeah, but it's not yet there, to be honest, and that's definitely the problem. But we have already ideas and solutions in place which might be helpful.
Thank you. And I saw Paul Hodson had a question just here. And then there were some more on this side.
Thank you. In fact, it was a remark on that point, or a realisation on that point, One thing we're working on is a smart readiness indicator for buildings, which would be a voluntary scheme. I was interested in how Mrs. Bärdges-Koch talked about other voluntary schemes feeding in. One of the aspects of the smart readiness indicator will be the ability of the building to tell the people who are running the building whether it is performing as it should be. So that may give, if we get it right, and it's not in existence yet, an extra tool to ensure or to feed into schemes of the kind you were describing.
Yeah, and the use of smart meter was another idea which could be extremely helpful. And then we came up with, what is it in English, GDPR, the data protection regulation. So you end up with other problems, just like from a completely different angle. Yeah, and I think this is a long way to go until we have data available in the form we would like to have it. Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, Benedetta, did you want to come in there and say anything about the performance insurance side of some of your work? Kind of.
It's already on. Yeah, I can't just apply to this specific topic. No, also because we're through EQuad. To be honest, we haven't had any. We're focusing a lot on the matchmaking process right now. So the insurance comes afterwards, only if in the second phase, during the negotiation phase, usually if the investors really steps in. So I have any practical application, but in theory, yeah, of course, the performance insurance would be definitely support the.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. And there will be something on performance insurance in one of the parallel sessions this afternoon. Yes?
Bettina Dorendorf, KfW. I have some questions. One directed to Peter Sweatman. You mentioned the deep database, and I would like to know what the main challenges are to be overcome in order to motivate more people to integrate data into this great database. Second question directed to Ms. Bärdges-Koch. I would like to know the scope of interest rate reduction of your green loan in comparison with the market conditions first. And second, I would be interested in knowing how you control, or what do you do to confirm the degree of energy efficiency of those loans financed with your green loan. So quality management is the question. And third one to Axel Bierer. You mentioned the database showing which existing public funds can be used to finance energy efficiency, and perhaps you could explain where this will be accessible and how and when. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, do you want to start with deep?
Yes. So first of all, thanks. Thank you, Bettina Dorendorf, because Bettina was actually part of the team that launched the EEFIG group. So just aside from now working for KfW, she was on secondment to the Commission when we launched this. And so thank you for your support then and for your question now. With respect to DEEP, let me explain the experience we have had, and that is the consortium that managed the DEEP process for 2 years had to provide a ton of its own resources to get data out of institutions. We thought when we created DEEP that it would be easy and data would sort of float out of institutions because people would be so keen to use the benchmarking tool, they would, in their own free time and over weekends, be supporting the data flowing into DEEP. That was not the case. In fact, in certain cases with certain institutions whom we knew had lots of data, we spent almost a year negotiating agreements and things to make them feel comfortable, which is fine, and we're happy to do that. But one of the things that I would absolutely recommend, and on top of that, another practical experience, thanks to the SEIF forums, I've been able to go to various different countries, including my own Spain, and say, oh, can you give us data? And when you ask that of somebody who's on a panel like this, they often say, absolutely yes, we've got lots of data, it's fantastic. And then when you, as I have done, follow up with them 1 month later, 2 months later, 4 months later, it's like, yeah, we're right on it. I'm like, yeah. Since then, we launched the process, there has been 0 additional data put on. 0. I've asked this question in forums like this. There have been how many? 13? Okay, there's the challenge. So what DEEP needs to do is it needs to be able to have the resources to go back and work with financial institutions who have data to get it out, and then to put it up. And then on the other side, to have the people who need the data give us the feedback to tell us what they need from the platform. So those two things sound kind of easy, but I think that probably requires a fair amount of resources. So that's the answer.
Thank you. So beware if you talk to Peter over lunchtime that he will hold you to commitments you make about sharing data. Claudia?
Data, yeah. First thing is, so when we grant the loan, we get the proof via an EPC, or just like even just a loan was provided as well by KfW. And as I mentioned with the other question before, I think that's the worst thing, and we've even contacted KfW, for example, in your loan department, how they manage it, just like to show the performance over lifetime. One thing what we have to do and will do is, because we've already been asked by Ökom Research, just like to lower our targets for the upcoming loans. And as we have always a fixed rate loan with amortization, the part of just like, let's say, older loans, the volume will be reduced by every year. So let's say their influence will decrease during lifetime. And so the biggest, even with granting the part of the volume of your energy efficient loan will be the biggest. And then just like trying to find the solution via this energy provider smart meter solution and a database which is just more or less for all of us available to find out, okay, here energy performance is running out to an enormous, then we would, because we have the already just like the check internally already now, we check the data of every energy efficient loan on a quarterly basis. So if, for example, something is missing, or when we realized, okay, they just transmitted an energy consumption of 1 kilowatt hour, then it completely is just like alarm bell rings already and say, okay, that can't be just, that's unrealistic. And then we really just like put it out from the energy efficient loan, but just then run it like a regular loan. So there is a process in-house that we say, okay, energy efficiency is not really proven or not the way we like it. And so it goes to, we can't separate the energy efficient part anyhow within the fund brief, but we would say, okay, it does no longer have the flagging of energy efficient. So that would be the way how we manage it, to say, okay, there is no proof or we can't confirm it. And in future times, it will be just like that. We have smart meter data of energy consumption and performance during lifetime of the contract or the loan. But this is something where we are working on a European basis. You had 2 questions, sorry. We go out, it's a reduction of 3 basis points, but we go out up to 30 years. I know that the reduction, especially in commercial, is higher, but there the margin is much higher, and the average is around 5 to 7 years, but we go out even out to 30 years with the reduction as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And then over to Axel for a few final words before lunch.
We have a slight delay in the publication of the database, which we planned already, but I think it's rather a question of weeks than months, and this should be available through a link the Commission website, as far as I understood the colleagues, but I can tell you exactly to where exactly that link will lead to.
Thank you very much. We can share some of that information with the note that will come around with the proceedings of this event. So would you join me very quickly in thanking our panelists for their presentations and for taking your questions and answers. And then just briefly before we break for lunch, let me explain to you a little bit of what will happen after lunch. We move from plenary into a set of 3 parallel sessions. The first on buildings, for which you will be back in here. The second and third sessions on industry and SMEs and sustainable transport and mobility are up 1 level, and there will be people on hand and signs to direct you to breakout rooms upstairs. So you need to make a choice as to which of those sessions you'd like to attend. So buildings back in here, industry and SMEs and transport and mobility up 1 level. We will ring the bell at 1:30 and aim to start roughly on time as soon as possible after that. The detail of the presenters and moderators for those sessions are within your agenda, but any of the organizing team would be happy to help guide you further. So please enjoy some lunch and then we reconvene at 1:30. Thank you.